Hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon when you're watching this video lecture. In the earlier session, we discussed about some of the core concepts of dividend policy and how these dividend decisions are taken by considering what kind of factors the managements of companies usually take these dividend decisions. Those conceptual aspects of this chapter we discussed in the earlier session. Now let us enter into the theories of dividend, which broadly can be classified into two categories. One is dividend irrelevance theories, which says naturally that dividend is irrelevant, and there is only one such theory, that is MM hypothesis. But there are two theories which say that dividend is relevant, which are relevance theories. One is Walter model and second one is Gordon's model. Let us start with Modigliani and Miller hypothesis or MM hypothesis, which is a similar one when we compare it with the capital structure irrelevance theories. Of course, the concept is similar, but the theories are not the same, though both of them say there is irrelevance. In the earlier case, they argued capital structure is irrelevant. Now they are arguing dividend is irrelevant. So what the theories generally say in this case is that the dividend policy has no effect on the price of the firm's stock or not even on its cost of capital. That's what is the argument of MM hypothesis or Modigliani-Miller hypothesis. Of course, there are certain assumptions, just like earlier. Here also there are some assumptions. Naturally, assumptions themselves mean that they are not real. So we have to just take them as assumptions only. First assumption is that the capital markets are perfect. Second assumption is that there are no taxes or tax discrimination. No taxes means no taxes. Even if there is tax, there is no discrimination between capital gains and dividend, and there is no discrimination between the corporate tax and individual tax. So that such kind of tax discrimination does not exist is the assumption of MM hypothesis. And a particular company will have a fixed investment policy. It knows exactly how much investment a particular company needs, which is okay. Most of the cases, the companies know what is their investment, but this assumes that the policy, the investment policy of the company is fixed. That is already known to the company. And another assumption, which is not very realistic, that is why it is assumption, is that there are no flotation costs or transaction costs. So if a company wants to just raise the finance, according to this theory, not really, according to this theory, it can just go to the capital markets and raise it. It's a very simple thing, just like that. But in reality, definitely it is not the case. But having said that, this is a theory and these are assumptions. And another assumption is that risk and uncertainty does not exist, which is also not possible. Usually the risks and uncertainties will exist and they will not be constant also. They will be keep on changing. But all these things are not practical. They are all only assumptions. That's what is MM hypothesis assumptions. This can be a theory question. What are the assumptions under the MM hypothesis? Under capital structure theories, similar assumptions but little different assumptions are also there. Here also similar assumptions but different assumptions are there for dividend irrelevance theory. So these are assumptions. Now what does this MM hypothesis tell us? Simply the essence of MM hypothesis is this which says that the market value of the equity shares of a firm depends on its earning power, definitely not on its dividends. It is depending upon the earnings power of the organization, how much it earns, that will impact the value of the firm. Market value of the firm is value of the firm, that itself is wealth of the shareholders, we know that. So here the market value or the wealth of the shareholders is not influenced by the manner in which the earnings are split between dividends and retained earnings. So the dividend policy is all about what? It is all about how much percentage of the earnings to be retained, how much percentage of the earnings should be distributed as dividend. That is dividend policy. So according to Modigliani-Miller, that dividend policy has no impact at all on the market value of the equity shares, which is also the wealth of the equity shareholders. So they argue dividend policy is irrelevant. How is that? Let us prove it. And the market value of equity shares is not affected by the size of the dividend also, what they say that. So how they have the argument earlier in the case of capital structure theories, they argued the same thing like arbitrage argument. Imagine if a particular firm has debt and another firm is not having debt. As we discussed earlier, one is a levered firm, the other one is an unlevered firm, or one is a geared firm or other one is an ungeared firm, whatever the names we use. The people, the investors use homemade debt. They will use personal leverage to get their advantage, and ultimately both the levered firm and unlevered firm will have same value. That's what capital structure irrelevance theory told us, using the process of arbitrage. Logic wise, even the dividend irrelevance theory also tells the same thing. Of course, it tells the dividend policy is irrelevant, and also it uses the arbitrage argument. Here, they argued that the people, the investors, will make some homemade dividends. How they do that? By selling the value of the share, by selling the share which has a higher value, and by buying the share which has lower value. And usually, for those people who say that dividends are relevant, what they say, the company which pays dividend will have a higher market price. That's what people normally say. Montague and Miller say that that is not possible. Why? Because if there is any particular company which gives a dividend, because of that, if it has a higher price, just because of that, and if there is another company which also has mostly the same type of earning, but just because it is not giving dividend, if the value of the share in the market is low, any rational investor, what they will do? They will sell the share with the higher price and they will buy the share with lower price. So till what time they will do this process? Till the prices of both the shares in the market are reaching equilibrium. This process is called as arbitrage process. Same logic they apply here also for dividend irrelevance theory. But of course, here there are little detailed application oriented formulae for this MM hypothesis, which are quite popular and many a time given in the examinations. So what do they say is the present price of the equity share definitely is depending upon P1 and D1, which is discounted at KE. So normally if you observe this, there is nothing new that MM are telling here. What is the present value of any asset? That is the value. For example, we take only 1 year in this case here. When you are taking only 1 year, in this case, numerator is having what? Numerator is having what the benefits the shareholder will get in the next year. What he will get? He will get a dividend, let us say, that is D1 in the next year. And imagining that, not really that he will do, imagining that he will sell this share at the end of next year, that is P1, which is the price of the share at the end of next year, not this year, next year, or we can say the end of the period. P0 is the price of the share at the beginning of the period now. So P0 is nothing but discounted value of, discounting at what rate? KE, that is the cost of equity. Naturally, that is called rate of capitalization, discount rate, cost of equity, whatever we call it. That is the discounting that is happening. Since it is 1 year, here 1 plus KE to the power of 1, which is ultimately nothing but 1 plus KE. So 1 plus KE is the denominator, which is nothing but just simply discounting. Discounting what? Discounting the cash flow that the shareholder might receive in the next year. What cash flows he might receive? One, dividend. Second, the price at which he can sell this share in the market next year. If you discount that, you will get the present market price of the share. That is the formula. Of course, these are all related with each other. We have to understand. We cannot say we know already how much is the dividend in the next year. We cannot say we know already how much will be the price of the share next year. Now, practically, these are all not possible. We should not jump to the practical conclusions. Again and again, we have to keep in mind these are theories. These are just formulae based on many assumptions. But concept is correct. Concept definitely works. But whether these things are known in real life, Who will give these numbers to us is always a bigger question. Nobody can answer that. But as far as our situation is concerned, we don't have any issue. Why? Because these details will be given in the question. All that you need to do a great job is substitute them in the formula and get the answer. Whichever information is given, substitute. One of them will come out as an answer. So when there is a formula, here P0 is there, P1, D1, KE. There are 4 variables in this formula. Definitely the information related to 3 variables has to be given, and you need to find out the other one. Whichever is that one depends upon the question. But the formula or the relationship is definitely clearly given by MM. That is P0 equal to P1 plus D1 divided by 1 plus KE. P0 is nothing but the current market price or price at the beginning of the period. P1 is the price of the equity share at the end of the period, or you can say the next year. And D1 is the dividend at the end of the period that is related to next year. That is discounted with KE, that is capitalization rate or cost of equity. That is a formula. First formula in MM hypothesis for dividend irrelevance theory, definitely to be very well remembered. Now, after that, they came out with another formula, of course, which can be derived also from the same formula. You don't need derivations and all, though these are all given here. If you're interested, you can go through that. But simply, the logic of that, if you understand, that is enough. Now we want to know what is the market capitalization of the firm or value of the firm now. So what is value of the firm? That is a VF, which is now. Now means beginning of the period. How to get that? P0 is the price, current market price per share now. N is number of shares already currently existing. That is in the beginning of the period. So how to get market capitalization? Very simple. You get market capitalization by multiplying the market price per share. Multiply with number of shares. That's all. But now it is. P0 is market price now. N is number of shares now. So current market capitalization is on the left hand side. How that can be calculated here is by taking the right hand side. What is that? N plus delta N. Here what is delta N is important. Delta N is the number of shares issued to raise the funds required. Then a question comes, how do we know the number of shares to be issued to raise the funds that required, which are required? That is where we have to come back to the assumption. The investment, i.e., the amount required for investment is known to the company already. Let us say for the next year, if a company has 100 crores earnings, but it has an investment plan of, let us say, 150 crores. Then, how much it has to raise extra? Definitely 50 crores it has to raise extra. So whatever the additional funds that is required for the investments, that has to be raised. How? Only by issuing equity shares. Here we are not talking about debt at all. We are only talking about equity shares. Again, going back to the assumption of Modigliani Miller, anytime markets are capital, markets are perfect and no transaction costs, suddenly today I want 50 crores, I can just go to the market and raise it. That is an assumption. That is how this theory works. Not really it works like that. But certainly the concept is what here, whatever the funds which are required over and above the earnings, they definitely have to be raised by issue of new equity shares. How many number of equity shares are to be issued? That is delta N. So if you want to know this N plus delta N, what is that N plus delta N? N plus delta N is the number of equity shares at the end of the period. Because N number of equity shares are already there in the beginning of the period. Delta N number of shares are issued during the period. So N plus delta N is the number of shares at the end of the period or next year. P1 is the price at the next year that we know already. P1 is the price of the share at the end of the period. So if you multiply delta N plus N into P1, so what is this giving? N plus delta N is number of shares at the end of the period. Multiplying it with P1, what it will give? Same thing. Market capitalization, but not now. Market capitalization at the end of the period. So that is first thing. Then there is minus I plus E. Plus E is plus earnings which are coming into the organization. So definitely plus. Minus I means cash flows, investment going out of the organization. So plus E minus I will give the better sequence. That's okay. Formula wise both are same. Minus I plus E. So what is the present market capitalization of any company? The value of the firm is what? The market capitalization at the end of the period divided by 1 plus KE. If you want to separate it, this is one thing. Definitely yes. But not only that. Not only that. There is earnings which is going to come the next year towards the organization, into the organization, but there is going to be investment also, right? If there is investment also, E minus I is going to be the net cash flow. This could be positive also, negative also. If earnings is more than investment, this will be positive. If investment is more than earnings, this is negative. But whatever it is, that divided by 1 plus K is nothing but the discounted value of those cash flows that will come to the organization or go out of the organization. Both of them, if you add, you get the market capitalization of the organization now. So this is an extension of the original formula only. When P naught is equal to D1 plus P1 divided by 1 plus KE, that can be improvised by multiplying and doing these exercises. Finally, to get this formula, that is N P naught is equal to N plus delta N into P1 minus I plus E whole divided by 1 plus KE. Simply, we are discounting the future market capitalization of the organization, and we are also discounting the net cash flows that are arising to the organization in the form of earnings minus investment. That could be positive or negative, but of course capitalization will be positive. If they are discounted at 1 plus KE, then we get the present market capitalization total it is. P naught is only per share. N into P naught is the total market capitalization. That's it. That is MM hypothesis. Only two formulae. These two formulae have to be definitely remembered well, and each of the denotions have to be definitely remembered well, and then they have to be applied in the problems according to the data that is given in the questions. So what are the advantages and disadvantages? Simply, this is logically correct, no problem with that, and it provides a framework on the dividend policy for the concept of arbitrage process. That's okay. But what are the limitations? As we already know, the assumptions are quite questionable. Those are not realistic, and sometimes this model may not work under uncertainty because it assumes that uncertainty is not existing, but in reality uncertainty exists. So nobody can say exactly I know what are my earnings going to be, exactly I know what are my investment requirements for the upcoming year. So those things are all quite unrealistic. That's fine. It does not matter to us. We will still get 5 marks from this. So we need to be definitely thorough with the concept as well as application. Application comes in the form of formulae and solving the problems using that formulae. Of course, final objective is the same. Objective is what? We need to prove that whether dividends are paid or not, the market capitalization of an organization will remain the same. And we will prove that by taking some numbers. Then we can understand MM hypothesis is logically correct or not. Of course, it is correct because they themselves developed the formulae by using that logic. And when you are using those formulae, naturally that theory will be correct only. So how that is proven, how that has to be proven is our point. So let us look at this illustration number 1. AB Engineering Limited belongs to a risk class for which the capitalization rate is 10%. See, first of all, you have to identify very clearly what is this 10%, that is KE. And it has currently outstanding 10,000 shares selling at 100 rupees each. So what is this 10,000 shares? So this 10% is KE. This 10,000 shares, you need to identify that very clearly once again. That is what N. Number of shares now currently outstanding 10,000 shares. Selling at 100 rupees per share. So selling at 100 rupees means P naught is given here. P naught is 100 rupees. That is the market price now, which are being sold in the market. The firm is contemplating declaration of dividend of 5 rupees per share at the end of the current financial year. That is a dividend per share which the firm is expecting or contemplating. It expects to have a net income of 1 lakh rupees and has a proposal for making new investments of 2 lakhs rupees. So what is this net income? Each of them having a denotation E. And what is this new investment? This is I. So everything is there. Calculate the value of the firms when the dividends are not paid and when the dividends are paid. That is the question. Of course, they both should be same. That's what MM hypothesis tells us. So that is the question here. And we need to apply various formulae, only 2 formulae. And for that purpose, we need to first of all know the formulae. What is the first formula? First formula is P naught is equal to D1 plus P1 divided by 1 plus KE. Of course, if you say that dividends are declared, there will be D1. If you say dividends are not declared, there is no D1. Let us take first situation when the dividends are declared. If the dividends are declared, how much dividend is going to be declared? That is given in the question, 5 rupees per share. How much is P1? That we don't know. That we don't know. We have to find that out. KE, we know that. That is 10% means 0.1. 1 plus 0.1 is 1.1. So 1 plus KE is 1.1. P0 is already given in the question, that is 100. So simply, how much will be P1? P1 will be 110 minus 5, which comes to 105. That is P1. So first thing first, we need to find out is P1. That is 105. Now that we have P1, we need to apply this into the next formula. The next formula is what? Next formula is N into P0 is equal to N plus delta N multiplied with P1. So N into P0 is current market capitalization. N plus delta N into P1 is next year's market capitalization plus earnings for the next year minus investment of the next year divided by 1 plus KE. In that, P0 we have, N we have, P1 we already calculated, E and I are given in the question, KE is given in the question. What we don't have is delta N. So what is delta N? So delta N basically is the number of shares that is supposed to be issued. Delta N. How many number of shares are supposed to be issued in order to meet the investment needs? For that, we need to first of all know how much is the investment need. Investment need here is 2 lakhs and it is expecting to have a net income of 1 lakh. So there is a possibility of net income of 1 lakh, but investment need is 2 lakhs. So how much fresh money will be required? So 2 lakhs is the investment. Keep it aside. Minus of, that is investment requirement, minus of 1 lakh is the net income, but that 1 lakh is not available for investment completely. Why? Because the firm is declaring dividend. In this first case, we are assuming that the firm has declared dividend. How much dividend it is declaring? 5 rupees per share. 10,000 shares means 50,000 shares it is declaring. So out of the earnings, 50,000 is gone. How much is there remaining? Only 50,000. But investment requirements are 2 lakhs. So how much freshly has to be issued from the market? 1,50,000 has to be issued, has to be taken from the market. At what price? At the price of the next year, which we already calculated, that is 105. So how many number of shares are supposed to be issued in order to meet the investment requirements of this company if it has declared the dividend will be approximately 1429 shares it has to issue. That is delta N. Now that we have delta N, we can substitute this in the formula and identify what is the current market capitalization, which we already know actually, we are just proving it. N is 10,000 plus delta N, just now we calculated, that is going to be approximately 1429 shares. P1 we know already, we calculated, that is 105 plus earnings are 2 lakhs. Earnings are 1 lakh, correct. Investment is 2 lakhs. Earnings are 1 lakh only. Investment is 2 lakhs. Whole divided by 1.1. So what is this amount here? 10,000 plus 1429. Those many number of shares are going to be there at the end of next year into 105. Plus 1 lakh minus 2 lakhs. Whole divided by 1.1. Approximately it is going to be 10 lakhs rupees. Of course, it will be around 10 lakhs 40 rupees. That doesn't matter. The final things are only because of decimals. So 10 lakhs rupees is the current market capitalization. Is it not correct? Yes. Because 10,000 is yen, 100 rupees is the current market price. So naturally 10 lakhs rupees is the current market capitalization. That is same here as proven by hypothesis, that keeping an earnings estimate and an investment requirement, how many new number of shares have to be issued, that will be different. P1 will be different and the market capitalization is 10 lakhs currently if the dividend is declared. Now the question comes, well, what if the dividend is not declared? Again, we have to do everything once again. What if the dividend is not declared? Logic is still the same. The formula is still the same. P naught is equal to D1 plus P1 by 1 plus KE. Here D1 is not there. Dividend is not declared. So P naught is equal to P1 by 1 plus KE. Right? In other words, just P1 by 1 plus KE. In this, what we know? P naught we know. P naught is 100. P1 we don't know. That is P1. 1 plus KE. KE we know 10%. That is, so 1 plus KE will be 1.1. So naturally, that means P1 is how much? 110. So now P1 is 110. Earlier P1 was 105. Now P1 is 110. But the question is, market price per share is different when the dividend is declared and when dividend is not declared. When the dividend is declared, it is different. When the dividend is not declared, market price next year is different. But market capitalization will be same. How? For that purpose, once again, we need delta N. What is delta N? Number of shares to be issued. How do we know that? Sir, we need 2 lakhs rupees worth of investment. We have that. Minus earnings are 1 lakh. Here there is no dividend. So minus 0 only. So 2 lakhs minus 1 lakh divided by P110. So how many number of shares are supposed to be issued here? 2 lakhs minus 1 lakh. You need 1 lakh rupees freshly to be raised through issue of equity shares at a price of 110. Which means how many number of equity shares? Approximately, once again, will be 909 equity shares are supposed to be issued in order to meet the investment requirements. Now that we know delta N, we can just apply that in the formula. NP naught is equal to N plus delta N multiplied with P1 plus earnings minus investment divided by 1 plus KE. N 10,000, delta N 909. So let us say 10,909 multiplied with P1 in this case is 110 plus earnings is 1 lakh. Investment is 2 lakhs. Right? Divided by 1.1. How much will that be? Again, check that. Again, it will be approximately equal to 10 lakhs. So, what is the conclusion here? Whether the dividends are declared or not declared, the market capitalization of the organization is 10 lakhs only. If it is dividends not declared also 10 lakhs, dividends declared also 10 lakhs. But what is changing? What is definitely changing is P1 and delta N. They will change. When they are changing, ultimately the final market capitalization of the organization is not changing. That's what MM hypothesis argues that dividends are irrelevant. That is the proof of it. Irrespective of whether dividends are paid or not paid, ultimately the market value of the organization or market capitalization of the organization or wealth of the shareholders is going to be same. For this purpose, you need to be carefully calculating delta N, which is nothing but number of shares to be raised. How to get that? Funds required divided by P1. How do we know the funds required? Earnings, main thing. If the requirement of investment is something, from that if you deduct earnings, further there is a requirement of investment. If you deduct dividend, if at all paid, then you get remaining funds to be raised from the market. If dividend is not there, simply investment requirement minus earnings is the funds to be raised from the market. If that is there, we can find out delta N. That can be substituted in the formula. So where we already have P1 and where we already have the other information given in the question. So finally, the current market capitalization of the firm, whether dividends are paid or not paid, is going to be same in this case. That is 10 lakhs. So the value of the firm remains the same in either case. That is what is Modigliani-Miller hypothesis, and exam questions also will ask the similar thing. Prove the Modigliani-Miller hypothesis from the data that is given in the question. So in this, main point is to remember the formulae, only two formulae. One is P naught is equal to D1 plus P1 by 1 plus KE. Other one is NP naught is equal to N plus delta N into P1 plus earnings minus investment divided by 1 plus KE. So these two formulae have to be remembered very, very thoroughly. So this is one formula, and this is another formula. These two formulae have to be remembered, and every information will be given in the question. And if it is not given, that means we have to find it by using the formula and substituting those details in the formula. That's all. That's what MM hypothesis is all about. Then let us move on. Other models which say that dividends are relevant. One of them is Walter's model, which says dividends are relevant. So the price of the equity share depends upon the dividend policy of the organization is the argument of Walter. Of course, this also is based on some assumptions, since any theory is generally based on assumptions. This is also based on assumptions. First thing first, all investment proposals of the firm are to be financed through retained earnings only. So unlike MM hypothesis, here there is no fresh issue of shares and all. Entire financing is happening from internal sources. And R, which is the required rate of return, or IRR we can call it, KE, cost of capital, both are constant. Perfect capital markets, no taxes, same, more or less similar assumptions, no flotation costs, and the firm has perpetual life. Of course, this has to be always the assumption. Nobody assumes that the firm is not a going concern. It is a going concern. It will have a perpetual life is the kind of assumption that we take. So when you have something perpetual, if you want to value something, what you will do? Divided by market capitalization is the valuation model for anything which is perpetual. So in this case, company is perpetual, so the discounting should happen divided by KE. That's all. So the formula here is the market price of the share currently will be equal to dividend plus R by KE into E minus D. What are these? Each of these denotions we should definitely remember and know them. D is dividend per share. E is earnings per share. P is the current market price per share. All of them we know, nothing special. DPS, EPS, MPS. That's all. Here we are calling EDP. So this is dividend per share. This is earnings per share. This is market price per share. Then KE we know, that is cost of equity, market capitalization rate or capitalization or discount rate, like that. So KE is the discount rate. R is internal rate of return or return on investment, which the firm can generate on its investments. So normally what is the average return that a firm generally able to make on its investments is R. Once you have them, you can find out the market price of the equity share by using this formula. So here, if you observe, this entire numerator is discounted with KE. That itself indicates it is a perpetuity. But the point here also is D is already there. So if you separate it, let us take like this: D by KE plus E minus D. What is E minus D? That is retained earnings, right? Retained earnings. Earnings per share minus dividend per share is retained earnings per share. So that into R divided by KE. So that is also discounted here. So point here is R divided by KE is the crucial factor. So this whole divided by KE is anyway there. What is R divided by KE? If R is greater than KE, then this numerator will give a better thing. This is going to be a greater than 1 scenario, which gives a better valuation. If R is less than KE, then it is not a good thing, because it will reduce the value. D by KE is constant, which is there. So this plus is going to be plus or minus. Is it going to be increasing it or decreasing? That depends upon R and KE. If R is greater than KE, numerator is more than denominator. That means it is more than 1, which means it is enhancing the retained earnings. If not, it is not enhancing the retained earnings, it is actually eating up the retained earnings. So that is not good. So what the Walter argues is the dividend policy of the organization will be two things only: either full dividend or nil dividend. That's it. There is no medium way. Either you declare fully or you don't at all declare the dividend. Simply, when you will declare dividend fully, when you are not in a position to get a better return than KE, then better to declare full dividend. On the other side, if the firm is able to get better return than KE, then don't declare any dividend, then D will be 0. So R and KE's relationship is what definitely going to be having a main factor or contribution to the market price of the share. Of course, dividend per share also will have its own contribution. So if you split it into two parts, one part is dividend per share, the second part is R by KE. This is the one which is going to have influence on the market price of the share according to Walter. So what are the two types of situations where the dividend is fully declared or not at all declared? So those are one, when the company is a growing company, R is going to be greater than KE. That means the company can get better return than KE. That means optimum dividend payout ratio in that case is 0. Means how much dividend has to be declared? Nothing. Nothing has to be declared. So here the correlation between the size of the dividend and market price is negative. That means when a company is not supposed to declare dividend, but if it is declaring, then when it declares the dividend, market price will go down. People don't like it. So for a growth company, what is the optimum payout ratio is 0. Of course, if R is equal to KE, then there is no correlation between dividend and the market price, and any payout ratio is optimum. There is no problem. So in this is not a situation where some decision has to be greatly taken. Anything can be taken when if R is equal to KE, which is practically very not so possible. But what if the R is less than KE? In other words, the company's internal rate of return is less than KE. Better to declare entire amount as dividends. The company does not have very good investment opportunities. Its investment opportunities are giving a return less than KE. So what is the point of investing then? Better not to invest. Then what to do with the earnings that are made by the company? Declare dividend, 100% payout ratio. In this case, the correlation between the dividend and market price will be positive. Why? Because a company which is in decline, or we can call it as a mature company generally. Decline is a very, again, bad word. So for a mature company, if it has so much of maturity and if it has so much of cash flow sufficient, then even if it declares 100% of its earnings also, people don't mind it. They will like it. So the market price of the share of such companies will go up. So ultimately there are two types of situations, though R equal to KE is a rare scenario. Two types of situations where R is greater than KE, R is less than KE. If R is greater than KE, then 0 payout. If R is less than KE, then 100% payout. That's the Walters model. So one way we can call it full or nil type of model. All or nothing. Either you declare everything as dividend, entire earnings you give it to shareholders, or you don't give even 1 paisa also to the shareholders. All or nothing is the model of Walter. What are the advantages? It is simple to understand, and it has different possible market prices for different dividend payout ratios are there, depending upon various factors like internal rate of return or return on investment, and the market capitalization rate and dividend payout ratio. These are the three factors majorly which will have an impact on the market value of the shares, which Walter says, which is correct also. So limitations are that, first thing first, it does not consider all the factors affecting the dividend policy. There are so many things, and determination of the capitalization rate KE is practically difficult. That's anyway a practical issue, and it ignores the factors like taxation at all and other legal and contractual things. Those things are all ignored. Any model cannot take all of them into consideration. With its own limitations, with its own assumptions, this has a logic. Definitely for a company which can earn better than its KE, it better retains that money, whatever it earns, and invest in its internal projects rather than declaring. It means 0 dividend payout. On the other side, for a company which earns less than the KE, where it is not able to earn that much as KE, then better not to keep it. Why to keep it? When you cannot earn, don't keep the money with you unnecessarily. So better to distribute it as dividend. Let the shareholders do whatever they want to do. So full or nil is the Walters model. Now let us look at this illustration number 2. XYZ Limited earns 10 rupees per share. This is EPS. Capitalization rate and return on investment are 10% and 12% respectively. So 10% is what? This is KE, and return on investment or internal rate of return, whatever it is given, that is R. which the company can earn on its investments. Determine the optimum dividend payout ratio and the price of the share at that payout. First thing first, here R is greater than KE, first that we have to identify. When R is greater than KE, is it better to pay out or better to retain? Better to retain. Why? Because the company is able to get better return than KE. So why to give dividend? So what is optimum payout ratio? 0. 0% is the optimum payout ratio, means no payout. So that means DPS is how much? DPS is 0. Then substitute. How much will be the price here? DPS 0 plus R by KE. R is how much? 12%. Always calculations you do in decimals. 0.12 divided by KE is 0.1 into earnings minus dividend. Again D is 0. So only earnings will be there, which is 10 rupees given in the question, divided by KE we already know. That is 0.1. So 0.12 divided by 0.1 into 10 divided by 0.1. 120 rupees is the price of the share if the company follows the optimum payout ratio of 0%. That is the question. What if the payout ratio is different, just for understanding purposes? If payout ratio is 25%, then how the market price will be? Let us check that. If payout ratio is 25%, dividend per share will be how much? 2.5 plus, again the same thing, R by K or KE into E minus D, 10 minus 2.5, 7.5 divided by 0.1. Do the calculations. So 0.12 divided by 0.1 into 7.5 plus 2.5 divided by 0.1. The market price is only 115, not 120. Definitely it is less than 120. Why? Because this is not an optimum payout ratio. 25% is not an optimum payout ratio. Anything other than 0 is not an optimum payout ratio. So 25% gave a lesser market price. If you do the same thing again, do this one practically for understanding. If at all 50% payout is made, market price will further go down. If 75% payout is made, market price will further go down. And if 100% payout is there, market price is going to be 100 only. So if an organization pays out exactly the optimum payout ratio, then only then only the market price will be higher, which is 120. If the organization pays anything other than optimum, the market price will be lower. And latter, if the payout ratio is much higher, market price is going much lower. Why is that? Because this is not a good thing that the management is doing. If it has R greater than KE, it should not declare anything as dividend. If it declares dividends, that is not a good thing. When it is not a good thing, the market prices will go down. As the dividends increase, market prices will go down. That's what we looked at in the table, the first situation. When R is greater than KE, what is the correlation between the size of the dividend and market price of the share? Correlation between market price of the share and dividend is what? Negative. That's what is proven here. When increase of dividend is happening, market price is continuously decreasing, because it is not an optimum payout according to Walter. Then coming to illustration number 3. The following figures are collected from the annual report of XYZ Limited. Net profit is 30 lakhs rupees. Preference shares are 100 lakhs rupees. Number of equity shares is 3 lakhs. This is number, not rupees. Return on investment is 20%. This is R. And cost of capital KE is 16%. All of them are given. Compute the approximate dividend payout ratio so as to keep the share price at 42 by using Walter's model. So reverse calculation. Payout is not given. Market price is given already. So if you want to keep the share price at 42, how much payout ratio should be there is the question. First thing first. How much is the earnings per share? That we should definitely know. How much is the earnings per share? How do we know that? First of all, 30 lakhs rupees is the net profit. That is not profit available to equity shareholders. That is net profit only. First deduct preference dividend. On 100 lakhs, 12% means 12 lakhs rupees is going to be definitely the preference dividend first, which has to be paid to the preference shareholders. So how much is the earnings available to equity shareholders? Only 18 lakhs. Divided by 18 lakhs divided by number of shares equity shares is 3 lakhs. So 18 lakhs divided by 3 lakhs. So EPS is definitely 6 rupees per share. So EPS 18 lakhs divided by 3 lakhs. 6 rupees per share is EPS. First thing first, that we have to find out. So you have E, that is 6 rupees. D how much? That we should find out. We don't know that. But what is the relationship here as given by Walter is P is equal to D plus R by KE into E minus D whole divided by KE. Substitute that. How much is P? That is given in the question, 42. Current market. Keep the share price at 42, he said. So 42 is equal to D, we don't know. R we know. R is 20%, means 0.2 divided by 0.16, that is KE, right? Into E we know 6. D we don't know once again. Whole divided by KE is once again 0.16. Just you need to solve this. 42 into 0.16. 42 into 0.16, first of all, 6.72. That is equal to D plus 0.2 divided by 0.16. 0.2 divided by 0.16 is 1.25. Into 6 minus D. Whole divided by, sorry, this already is done. That's it. So that is equal to 6.72 is equal to D plus 1.25 into 6, 7.5 minus 1.25 D. So take this minus 1.25 D and D minus 0.25 D, take it to the other side. So 0.25 D is equal to 7.5 minus 6.72. That comes to 0.78. That means how much is D? 0.78 divided by 0.25. That is 3.12 rupees. So how much is the payout ratio is the question. 3.12 rupees divided by 6 is the payout ratio. That means payout ratio is 52%. 3.12 divided by 6. Why? Payout is nothing but dividend per share divided by earnings per share. Dividend per share we found out now. That is 3.12. Earnings per share we already know. So what is the payout ratio here? 52%, and that is naturally going to be the final answer. That is the payout ratio. Reverse calculation. Once the price is given, we are finding out payout ratio. For that we need to find out D. Once you find out D, payout ratio can be found out. So these type of questions were asked in the examination earlier. Go to question, illustration number 3. That is applying the Walters model. Now moving on to another model, that is Gordon's model. This is also a relevance theory. Dividend is relevant, it says, but of course it has its own assumptions. Firm is all equity firm, that means no debt. IRR remains constant, KE remains constant, retention ratio remains constant, growth rate remains constant. All of them are known. Constant means all of them are known. And basically KE is greater than G because expectation is more than the growth rate. This KE is greater than G. G is the growth rate. So KE of the cost of equity is always more than the growth rate is another assumption. And all the investments are financed through retained earnings only. These are the assumptions only. Of course, theory questions can very well be asked from that. So many things are there. All equity firm, IRR constant, KE constant, retention ratio is constant, B is constant, that means. Growth rate G is equal to BR, we know already, that is constant, and KE is greater than G. And entire financing is going to happen through retained earnings only. Then if that is the case, how the Gordon's formula is going to be applied for calculating the current market price per share, which is P0, is equal to E1. E1 means earnings per share, not now, for the upcoming period, into 1 minus B. Understand this carefully. What is B? B is retention ratio. 1 minus retention ratio is payout ratio. That means E1 into 1 minus B is what? Basically, for our understanding, that is nothing but D0. That is D1, sorry. So that is D1. So express it separately, that's all. E1 into 1 minus B is nothing but D1 divided by KE minus BR. B is retention ratio, R is rate of return, that we know already. BR is G, that also we know. So if you observe and remember the formula that we already know, there is nothing new here. In the chapter of cost of capital structure, we had the Gordon's formula. Same formula is coming here again. Just expression is different. The formula is exactly same. What is P naught? D1 or D naught plus D naught into 1 plus growth rate, right? That is also D1. Same thing. D naught into 1 plus growth rate divided by KE minus G, isn't it? So what is D naught into 1 plus growth rate? That is nothing but D1. How did we get D1 here? Instead of doing this, we are getting E1 into 1 minus B. When B is retention ratio, 1 minus B will be payout ratio. E1 is earnings per share. So earnings per share into payout ratio is D by E. That means D is the numerator. Which D? Not D naught, D1. That is basically the numerator. E1 into 1 minus B is the numerator, which is same as D1. Different ways it can be found out. D naught into 1 plus G also gives the same thing. E1 into 1 minus B also gives the same thing. Both are same. Ultimately, they lead to the dividend for the next year, which is D1. Divided by KE minus G is same. KE minus G is BR, we know that. So KE minus BR means KE minus G only. That is what is the Gordon's model for computation of share prices for purpose of dividend policy determination. Of course, here, depending upon the dividend policy, the share prices will definitely change. How do they change? Again, the same logic. Logic is going to be same. Logic of Walter and Gordon is same. For a growth firm, if R is greater than KE, optimum payout ratio is 0. If for a normal firm where R is equal to KE, no optimum ratio, any dividend is okay. For a matured firm or a declining firm where R is less than KE, 100% payout is optimum. Logic of whether to pay higher dividends or lower dividends is still the same. You pay higher dividends when your internal rate of return is less than the KE. If you are not able to generate sufficient return as expected by the shareholders, better to distribute to them. If not, if you have a good R, good internal rate of return, then better to retain. That's all. So this formula has to be remembered very well. This is P naught equal to E1 into 1 minus B divided by KE minus BR. Same thing. Conceptually, there is nothing new in this formula. The same formula that we already know earlier in the chapter of cost of capital structure. Only expression is different. Concept is same. What is P naught here? That is price per share. E1 is earnings per share. B is retention ratio, which is nothing but 1 minus payout ratio. 1 minus payout ratio is B. 1 minus B is payout ratio naturally. So 1 minus payout ratio, if it is B, 1 minus B will be payout ratio. Both are same. Both are complements to each other. K is cost of capital, R is internal rate of return, R return on investment, BR is growth rate, G. That's it. That is the model, Gordon's model, where the formula has to be used. And out of these three things, Gordon's model is nothing new. Everything is as we already know in the chapter of cost of capital structure. Only data given could be different. So ultimate concept is same. There, we would have done it in a different way. If you just remember that one, computation of cost of equity. Cost of equity, how do we compute that? Maybe it is just in a different way. So cost of equity is equal to D1 by P naught plus G. That is a formula you know earlier, which is there already in the Gordon's model. Gordon's growth model we call it. Same thing now. What is that? KE minus G is equal to D1 by P naught. Then how much is going to be P naught? Naturally D1 by KE minus G. Same thing, nothing new. What is D1? Earnings into 1 minus retention ratio divided by KE minus what is G? BR. That is the formula. Now, so this is the formula which is same as this formula, which you already know. Again, I am repeating, there is no difference in the formula. It is only the expression which changes. The concept of Gordon is one and the same. Right? And the logic of dividend policy between Gordon and Walter also is the same. There is no difference there. Now looking at the question here, illustration number 4, let us solve it. The following figures are collected from the annual report of XYZ Limited. Net profit is given, outstanding shares same as earlier, same question like that. So 3 lakhs is the number of equity shares. So naturally earnings per share is 6 rupees, that we already found out, right? And return on investment is 20% and cost of capital is, or KE is 16% capitalization rate. All are given, same thing, but now only thing is we are using not Walter's formula but Gordon's formula. Gordon's formula, when the payout ratio is 25%, when the payout ratio is 50%, and when the payout ratio is 100%, we need to find out the market price using Gordon's formula. That is the point here to be noted. Okay. For that purpose, first thing first, we need to find out G. That is important, or BR. Both are same. What is G? G is equal to B into R. What is B? Retention ratio. In the first case, payout is 25% means retention is how much? 75%, which is 0.75. Payout 25 means retention 75. R, return on investment is 20% means 0.2. So 0.2 into 0.75 means 0.15. Or 15% is the growth rate. Okay, let us keep it like that because anyway we have to substitute in the formula. So what is the formula here? P naught is equal to E1 into 1 minus retention rate divided by KE minus BR. Substitute. Earnings how much? We know that is 6 rupees. Here B how much? Payout is 25%, that itself is 1 minus B, right? 1 minus B is payout, so don't need to do again double calculation, simply 0.25. In other words, D1, what is D1 now? 6 into 25%. So 6 into 25% itself is D1, that is 1.5, fine, whatever it is. 6 into 0.25 divided by KE is given in the question. KE is how much? 0.16. Minus BR is 0.15. So 6 into 0.25, 1.5 divided by 0.01. That is price of the share, market price of the share when the dividend payout ratio is 25% will be equal to 150 rupees. That is the first scenario. What if the payout ratio is 50%? Of course it will change. It will change. Now substitution will be 6 is same, payout ratio is 1 minus B, that itself is payout ratio, so 0.5 divided by KE is 0.16, but now G will change or BR will change. Let us substitute here itself. B is how much here? 0.5, R is 0.2, right? Yeah. So 6 into 0.5, that is 3 naturally, divided by 0.5 into 0.2, that is 0.1. 0.16 minus 0.1 is 0.06. So 3 divided by 0.06. That comes to 50 rupees, correct. So when the dividend payout ratio is more, the market price has gone down. Once again, why? Why? Because this firm is earning a better return. For this firm, this company, return on investment is higher than the cost of equity. So better thing is to retain, not to distribute. But okay, let us say that if it has distributed 25%, that's okay. Market price was 150. If it has further distributed and if its payout ratio is 50%, market price will go down. Market price is negatively correlated with the dividend payout if the firm's return on investment is more than the cost of equity. What if the dividend payout ratio is 100%? Then definitely further the market price will go down. But how much? Once again, 100% payout means entire earnings is distributed as dividend, 0.16 minus. Here BR is how much? Retained 0. Retained 0 means B into R will be also 0. So 6 divided by 0.16 directly, that will be equal to 37.5 rupees. That is the market price if the 100% payout is followed by the company, which is not good, which is not a valid or optimum payout ratio, even according to Gordon also. That is proven here in illustration number 4. That's it. That is one more model. And later, the same thing is little bit revised and called as bird in hand theory. It can be a theory question where there are two arguments. One thing is investors are risk averse and investors put a premium on certain return and a discount on uncertain return. So what is the new thing here? Nothing new. This is the same formula that we know. P naught is equal to D naught into 1 plus G, which will give basically D1 divided by KE minus G. Nothing new. Formula wise it is all the same. So depending upon the information, you have to use the formula. And this also we discussed earlier. The intrinsic value of any asset has to be found out by taking the present value of the future cash flows. Whether it is bond valuation, whether it is a stock valuation, stock means share, any of them will be calculated like that only. So it is called as a dividend discount model. Couple of questions we already did in the capital structure, cost of capital chapter. Same thing is explained here once again. Basically discounting the future cash flows that are arising from this particular share. What will be the future cash flows? Dividends. First year dividend, second year dividend, like that. Dividends are all taken. Then final sellable value or value of the share at the end of nth period will be taken. That will be discounted also. So total stock's intrinsic value will be that much. That is called dividend discount model. In this also, there are different models where zero growth and constant growth and variable growth are there. Again, all of them are already discussed in the cost of capital structure chapter. Zero growth means directly P naught is equal to D by KE, annual dividend divided by required rate of return. No growth is involved in that, directly D by KE. So for example, if there is a company which is no growth company paying a dividend of 5 rupees per share, cost of capital is 10%, directly how to get that? Whatever the dividend divided by KE, that will be 50 rupees, simple. That is no growth model. Constant growth model is what we already have seen earlier also, the same thing, where D naught into 1 plus G divided by KE minus G. How to get G? B into R. Nothing new. Look at this illustration number 6. XYZ is a company having a share capital of 10 lakhs rupees of 10 rupees each. It distributed current year 20% dividend of 20% per annum. Current, that is current, not future. D naught, that is. Annual growth rate of dividend is expected to be 2%. Expected return on equity on the equity capital is 15%. Compute the price applying the Gordon's growth model. Simple. D naught how much? 20% of 10 rupees is 2 rupees, right? That is D naught. Multiply with 1 plus growth rate expected at 2%. So 1.02 D naught into 1 plus growth rate divided by KE minus G. KE how much? 15%. Growth rate is 2%. Remaining is 13%. 13% is nothing but 0.13. So straight away 2 into 1.02 divided by 0.13. So what is going to be the market price of this share? That is 15.69 rupees. That's the same thing. So depending upon the data given in the question, we have to use the formula. If there is no growth, straight away D by P naught. D by P. D by KE. So for KE we got D by P naught. Now it is reverse. P naught is equal to D by KE. Earlier we wanted to calculate KE. What was the formula? There it was D by P naught. That was the formula. Gordon's model. Same, no, both are same, just cross multiplication. Earlier same way. Earlier as we discussed just now. Earlier when we wanted KE, how did we get that? We got it by taking D1 by P naught plus G. Now it is just reverse. Now P naught is equal to D1 by KE minus G. Then what is D1? D1 is nothing but D naught into 1 plus G divided by KE minus G. That is P naught. What is new here? Nothing new. Same formula earlier used, now also used in the same way. But only point is cross multiplication and expression are different. So D naught into 1 plus G divided by KE minus G is the price of the share to be calculated by using the Gordon's model. Like that, if the variable growth rates are there, when variable growth rates are there, then the calculation will be different. So let us say how the variable growth rates will have impact on the market price. A firm had paid a dividend of 2 rupees per share last year. Estimated growth rates is 5% normally. Determine the estimated market price of the equity share if the estimated growth rate of dividends rises to 8% and falls to 3%. Also find out present market price of the share given that required return on equity is 15%. See here, there is variable growth and all is not happening. Double discounting or also is not happening. Only thing is, usually when there is a change in the growth rate, straight away the market price, what is the impact of that is there in the question. Of course, the concept of variable growth rate is not that. The concept of growth rate here usually is different, which we did already in the capital structure, cost of capital chapter. There will be 3 different rates of growth. Usually, initially there will be higher rate of growth. After that, there will be slower growth, and after that, there will be a steady rate of growth. So, according to that growth, we will discount the dividends. D1, D2, D3 like that. We will discount the dividends. And the constant growth, once it reaches, there we will find out the market value of the share by taking perpetuity formula. That will be, let us say, if you want to know what is the market price of the share in the 6th year, what you will take is dividend for 7th year divided by KE directly. Like that, we will take market price, and that will be discounted also by taking 1 plus KE to the power of n. So this is the double discount model or triple discount model. Those things generally will not be given at intermediate level, but if given, at least 2 different growth rates are possible. But this question is not that. This question is only just changing the growth rates, and it wants to check the impact of that on the price. So when growth rate changes, naturally the market price changes. First case, what is the growth rate? Growth rate is 5% normally. So how to calculate P here? Original dividend is 2 rupees. 1 plus growth rate now is, since growth rate is 5%, 1.05 divided by KE minus G. KE is 15%, growth rate is 5%, means 10% will be the denominator, which means 0.1. So straight away, 2 into 1.05 divided by 0.1, that comes to 21 rupees. That is the first scenario, when the growth rate is 5%. Now the question is only simply, what if the growth rate rises to 8%? Growth rate rises means naturally the price also will rise. That's a good thing, right? Good thing will increase the price. How? Apply that once again. 2 into 1.08 divided by 15 minus 8. 15 minus 8 is 7%. That means 0.07. So 2 into 1.08 divided by 0.07. That comes to 30.86. 30.86. That is a price if the growth rate is more than 5%. What if the growth rate is 3%? When the growth rate is 3%, then market price will go down. Again, same. 2 into 1.03 divided by 15 minus 3 is 12%. 12% means 0.12. So 2 into 1.03 divided by 0.12. That falls down to around 17.17 or 17.17. That is going to be the market price if the growth rate is only 3%. That is about Gordon's model, Gordon's growth model, which have 3 different possible situations. One is no growth, one is constant growth, and one is variable growth. These are the various aspects of Gordon's model. And of course, there are some advantages and limitations naturally. Of course, here, this is a dividend discount model, very good one. It's a futuristic model, and it will have particularly discounting the future cash flows is the best thing. Present value of future cash flows is the way any valuation of any asset happens. So that is the same thing that Gordon also uses, which is good. And this Gordon's model is easy to understand also. That is the advantage. Limitations is that it is all depending upon the projections, which is about future, which is not easy to calculate. They are very difficult to calculate accurately because we are all estimating them only, not realities. And the true intrinsic value of a stock is definitely difficult to determine realistically. We are all doing theoretical things only here. Will it be the market price currently at which this stock will be traded? Definitely not, because the stock is traded on basis of so many things we are estimating. Dividend in the next year we are estimating by estimating growth rate, by estimating the retention ratio, and by estimating the cost of equity. All our estimations, how can the market price be exactly same? Not possible. So again and again we have to keep in mind these are theories and theories only, not to be taken as completely practically also applicable. Yes, they give a tendency. If the market price of a share is very different from this, then that may give an indication to a person that the market price of the share is either overvalued or undervalued. That may be a model which can be used to compare the market prices, but definitely that does not mean exactly the market prices will be same. If the market prices can be found out by taking formulae, we don't need stock markets, right? What is the use of stock markets? So definitely this market price will not be the one which is traded in the stock market, but will it be giving an indication? Yes. Whether the stock market price is more than this or less than this or is around this, that gives an idea whether a stock is overvalued or undervalued. For that purpose only, all these models will be useful. Otherwise, for practical purposes, much usage of these models is not generally encouraged. Anyway, that will conclude the three major models of dividend policy. One is the hypothesis, and other one is Walters model. These are the three models. Hypothesis, which says which is irrelevance theory, which says dividends are irrelevant. Second one is Walters model, and the third one is Gordon's model. Both of them will tell that dividends are relevant. And the formulae, this has two formulae, this has one formulae. This has actually one formula only, that is expressed in multiple ways. Ultimately, the logic of Gordon is future cash flows arising from the equity share have to be discounted in order to get the price of the share. So if it is to be considered as separate things, then it has three further sub formulae: when there is no growth, or when there is a constant growth, or when there is a variable growth. In that case, yes, we can say that it has three different formulae, but ultimately these are the formulae to be used according to the information given in the question. And these are the practical applicable formulae and theories. Now, looking at some of the less important, but since they are there in the syllabus, let us just go through them. Some traditional models are also there. One of them is called Graham and Dodd model, which says that P is equal to M into D plus E by 3. So D plus E by 3. D is dividend per share, E is earnings per share, M is the question. M is a multiplier. Who gives that to us? In exams, question gives that to us. In reality, nobody gives that to us. That is why Graham and Dodd model is utter flop model. So ultimately, this is not at all possible to get that multiplier, practically speaking. So it's not about practicality, it is about examination and formulae. So here, price can be calculated by taking whatever that multiplier is, D plus E by 3. But one logic we can understand here, definitely the dividends are 3 times important than earnings. That's the logic Graham and Dodd say, and that means dividends are very relevant, very important for the market prices. Is the essence is correct, but M who will give is a big question mark. But for us it's not a problem because it will be given in the question. Multiplier is 2, earnings per share is 30, payout ratio is 60%. Find out the price as per Graham and Dodd model is the question. M is 2, okay, fine. D plus, D means how much? Dividend per share here, 30 into 60% means 18 rupees, plus E by 3. E is already known, E is 30 by 3. So 30 by 3 is 10, 10 plus 18 is 28, 28 into 2 is 56. That's it. That is the market price according to Graham Dodd model. This is a formula to be remembered. If at all as a bit question, if it is given separately, maybe some different models can be asked, right? The same question can ask Walters model also, Gordon's model also. Also, if it asks Graham Dodd model, you should not lose that 1 mark. So remember that formula also. Other than that, more than 1 mark, it will not give us anything. Now, same thing in a different way it is asked. Market price is given, dividend per share is given, multiplier is given. According to the Graham and Dodd approach, find out the EPS is saying. Formula, if you substitute, you will get the answer. So 58.33 is the market price, that is known already. That is equal to M, which is 7, multiplied with definitely D, which is known. D is 5, plus E by 3. So first of all, 5 plus E by 3 is equal to how much? 58.33 divided by 7, right? That will be equal to 8.33. Then E by 3 is how much? 8.33 minus 5, that will be 3.33. Then E will be how much? 3.33 into 3, approximately 9.99, which means 10, let us say. So earnings per share is going to be 10. What is the payout ratio if the question asks? 50%, because dividend per share is 5 rupees. So earnings per share is approximately 10 rupees. That is called Graham and Dodd model. That is one more model, but it is called one of the traditional models. Then there is another model called Linter's model. So Linter's model is also a traditional model. Once again, the problem with this is there will be an adjustment factor which nobody gives to us in reality. So how to get this Linter's model? It does not give any particular price of the share. It only tells that D1, next year how much dividend to be declared, it depends upon last year's dividend. So what does it say? D1 is equal to D0 plus EPS into target payout minus D0 into adjustment factor. So what is this adjustment factor? That has to be given in the question. That is to be adjusted for the speed or whatever. So point here is formula. D0 plus EPS into target payout will also give us, target payout means dividend only. But that dividend minus D0 has to be multiplied with adjustment factor. So this has to be added to the last year's dividend. Then the D1 will come. How to apply this? Let us take the example, illustration number 10. Given the last year's dividend is 9.8, which means D0 plus speed of adjustment is 45%, that is adjustment factor, will come to that. Target payout ratio is 60%. EPS for current year is 20%. So anyway, first of all, you have to take D0, take it aside. Then EPS into target payout ratio. EPS is 20, target payout ratio is 60%. EPS into target payout ratio is 60% of 20. That will come to around 12 minus D0, which is 9.8. This has to be multiplied with 45%. The second one is completely different. First one is completely different. So 9.8 is something which is already there. Plus, in addition to that, 12 minus 9.8 into 45% has to be added to that. That means how much should be the dividend now? 10.79 rupees. So 12 minus 9.8 into 45% is how much? 0.99. That means 0.99 rupees of dividend has to be paid over and above the last year's dividend. Totally, the next year's dividend is supposed to be 10.79. So here adjustment factor is a very arbitrary number. It does not give any market price. Unlike all other models, this model does not give market price. It only tells how much could be the dividend next year, keeping the last year's dividend in mind. So which is again completely arbitrary in nature because of the adjustment factor, which is also there in this formula. These are the various models. Again, important models are three. Important models are definitely the Modigliani-Miller model, Walters model, and Gordon's model. In addition to that, there are two more traditional approaches also. One is Linter's model, the other one is Graham and Dodd approach. These are the dividend decisions and dividend policies. Then there is a small concept of stock splits, which is nothing but, stock split is basically nothing but division of the shares, consolidation of the shares. These are all part of accounting also. You must be knowing them already. So when there is a stock split, what happens? Nothing happens. Simply the face value of the share will go down. Nothing else. So 10 rupees share is split into, let us say, 2 shares of 5 rupees each. That's a stock split. Reverse split means consolidation of shares. So consolidation and subdivision of shares is what in financial management language called as reverse split and split. So that is about dividend policies and some other concepts related to dividends. Now, let us look at some of the illustrations which are given at the end of the study material. Let us quickly go through them. Illustration number 11. Illustration number 11. RST Limited has a capital of 10 lakhs rupees in equity shares of 100 rupees each. So when it has 10 lakhs rupees in 100 rupees each means how many number of shares are there? First of all, 10,000 shares are there, that is N. The shares are currently quoted at par. So current market price is 100 rupees only. So that is P naught at par. P naught is 100 rupees. Company proposes to declare a dividend of 10 rupees per share at the end of the current financial year. That is proposed dividend. The capitalization rate for the risk class of which the company belongs to is 12%. That means it is KE. Compute the market price of the share at the current year, end of the current year, if the dividend is not declared or if the dividend is declared, and assuming that the company pays dividend and has a net profits of 5 lakhs rupees and makes new investments of 10 lakhs rupees during the period, how many new shares must be issued? Use MM model. See, for any MM model, we need these two details also. So the third one is also part of the original information. New investments are 10 lakhs, net profits are 5 lakhs. So according to that, when the dividends are not declared and when the dividends are declared, what will be the market price of the shares has to be found out using MM hypothesis. That is illustration number 11. For that purpose, let us first take when the dividends are declared. When the dividends are declared, what is the formula? Formula we should remember, P naught is equal to D1 plus P1 divided by 1 plus KE. But how much is P naught? 100. D1 how much? It proposes to give a dividend of 10 rupees per share. So 10 rupees plus P1 we don't know, divided by 1 plus KE is 1.12 because 12% is the cost of equity. So 1.12 into 100 minus 10. That means how much is going to be P1? 102. When the dividends are declared, the P1 is going to be 102. After that, what we should find out is delta N. How do we know delta N? How many number of new shares are supposed to be issued? Simple. Investment is supposed to be how much? 10 lakhs. Minus of how much are the profits? 5 lakhs. But the entire profits are not available for investment. Why? Because in the first case, we are assuming it is dividends declared. Proposed dividends are how much? 10 rupees per share. 10,000 shares, 10 rupees per share means how much? 1 lakh rupees dividends are going to be declared. So earnings will be available only 4 lakhs. But investments are 10 lakhs. That means fresh funds, how much will be required? 6 lakhs rupees of fresh funds will be required. And they have to be raised at what price? At P1 price. That is what we know already. That is 102. Actually, this calculation, you don't need to do that. You can straight away take it in the main final calculation. But if you want to do that, that is also okay. 6 lakhs divided by 102 because it will give decimals. Some number of shares has to be found out. Of course, here in this case, you have to do that. Why? Because company pays dividend and has this, all these things. How many number of new shares must be issued is also part of the question. That is 5,882 number of new shares are supposed to be issued. What is this? This is delta N. Once you have delta N, you substitute that in the formula. NP naught is equal to N plus delta N multiplied with P1 plus earnings minus investment divided by 1 plus KE. That is the situation. Now, what is asked here? Compute the market price of the share at the end of the year if the dividends are declared and dividends are not declared. See, actually these things are all not asked. Just for proving the Modigliani-Miller, we are checking that. If the dividends are declared, what is the market price? 102. We already got that. Answer is for first question 102. Right? Answer for second question will be different. But just to check that, is it matching, that you have to check. NP naught is what? Number of shares currently multiplied with current market price. So market price is at par. So that should be equal to 10 lakhs. Let us see whether it is correct or not. So 10,000 number of number of existing shares are there plus 5882. That means 15,582 582 new shares will be there. Total shares will be there after the new shares. And P1 we know already, that is going to be 102 plus earnings. How much? Earnings are going to be only 5 lakhs. Investments are going to be 10 lakhs divided by 1 plus KE, that means 1.12. Check that. Minus 10 lakhs divided by 1.12. It will be naturally 10 lakhs, which is actually exactly the same. NP naught. N we know already, P naught we know, which is 10 lakhs. So it is not asked to be proven. So we don't need to do this calculation, but for learning purposes, we can do that anytime. In some questions, examinations, it will be asked to be proven. But here only price is asked, that's all. So 102 is the answer for first question. Answer for second question. Same formula once again. P naught is equal to D1 plus P1 divided by 1 plus KE. But here we don't know P1. Dividend is not declared here. Dividend not declared, second option. P naught is 100. That is equal to D1 will be 0. P1 we don't know. Divided by 1 plus K is 1.12. So how much will be P1 naturally? 112. So in the second case, answer is 112. And what is the answer for third question, which we already calculated? That is 5,882 shares. That's all. So when the dividend is not declared, price is 112. When the dividend is declared, price is 102. How many shares are supposed to be issued? Approximately 5,582 or 83 shares. That should be okay. Don't worry about decimals and all. Round it to some number of shares. That is about hypothesis application in illustration number 11. Similar to that, illustration number 12 is also there, but this is not hypothesis, it is Walters model. The following information pertains to XY Limited. Earnings of the company 5 lakhs, dividend payout ratio is 60%, number of shares outstanding is 1 lakh, and equity capitalization rate is 12%, rate of return on investment is 15%. Now what would be the market price of the share as per Walters model? What is the optimum dividend payout ratio according to Walters model, and market value of the share at that payout ratio? See, currently dividend payout ratio is 60%. Is it optimum or not? That we have to check. But definitely, when the return on investment is more than the KE, it is not optimum for sure. So currently, what is the payout? What is the price? And what will be the optimum price? Both of them have to be found out. Currently, what is the price? That for that purpose, again, you need to know the formula and apply various things into that formula. So in the Walters model, what is the price? How to find out the price of a particular share is D, dividend, plus R divided by KE into E minus D divided by KE. So substitute what are all there. D, dividend payout ratio 60%. EPS do we know? First we should know that when the earnings of the company are 5 lakhs, number of shares outstanding is 1 lakh. EPS is 5 rupees per share. That means dividend per share will be 3 rupees since payout ratio is 60%. R here is 15%, 0.15 divided by 0.12 multiplied with E minus D, 5 minus 3, that is 2, whole divided by KE, equity capitalization rate 12%, that is going to be 0.12. So 0.15 by 0.12 into 2 plus 3 divided by 0.12. That gives us how much price? 45.83 rupees. That is a current market price according to the data that is given in the question with a 60% payout ratio. So if the company is having 60% payout ratio, price is 45.83. But is it optimum? Definitely not. You have to write some theory. According to the Walters model, since the R, return on investment, is greater than KE, optimum payout ratio is certainly going to be 0% only. So when it is 0%, recalculate everything once again. If it is 0%, then how much will be the price? D is 0, R by KE will be there. R by KE is 0.15 divided by 0.12 will be there. Again, E is there, but D is 0. So E is how much? 5 divided by 0.12. So how much is going to be the price in that case? 0.15 by 0.12 into 5 divided by 0.12. In that case, the price of the share would be 52.1 approximately. Whereas now the price of the share is only 45.83 because the company is not following a optimum payout ratio. At the optimum payout ratio, the price of the share will be approximately around 52.1. That's it. That is about the Walters model and its application. Some type of questions like that can be given. Now looking at illustration number 13, taking an example of three different firms, growth, normal and declining, calculate the share price using Gordon's model. Gordon's model is asked. Whichever model is asked, we just have to substitute in the formula and get the answer. R is given, that is the rate of return on the retained earnings, and KE is given, cost of capital, earnings per share, E is given, B is given, that is retained earnings. Naturally, payout ratio will be 1 minus B, remaining of that. Now, what is the formula here to be noted here? For the Gordon's model, what is the formula? For the Gordon's model, the formula is going to be earnings into 1 minus B divided by KE minus BR. So KE minus BR. Okay. So here, what will change in each of these cases majorly, if you observe, is going to be BR only. The growth rate only is going to change. Remaining things are all same. If you look at R, that is changing. R is changing. KE is same. E is same. B is same. 1 minus B is also same in all the cases. So when E is same, 1 minus B is same, numerator is same. Numerator is always going to be how much? E, that is 10 into 1 minus B, that is payout ratio, 0.4, that is going to be 4. So numerator is fixed for all the three cases. In all the three cases, numerator is 4 only. But what changes is denominator. KE is also same, but what changes is BR. So find out BR in all the three cases. R is changing, B into R. B into R. So 15% into 0.6. That comes to 9% in the first case. Then 10% into 0.6. Naturally 6%. Third, 10% into 0.6, 6%. Then 8% into 0.6. That will be 4.8%. That is BR. So KE minus BR. KE how much? That is same. That is 10%. So 10% minus 9% is 1%. 1% means 0.01. Same way, 10%. 0.1 minus 0.06, 0.04. Same way, KE 10% is same. 0.1 minus 0.048, 0.052. So only denominator is changing. So accordingly, what is going to be the price of these shares? 4 divided by 0.01, that comes to 400 rupees. Second case, 4 divided by 0.04, that comes to 100 rupees. 4 divided by 0.052, that comes to 77 rupees approximately. These are the prices of the shares according to Gordon's model. 400, 100, around 77. Same things, 400, 100, 77. So like that, the share prices will change depending upon the type of the firm. Okay. So in the case of a growth firm, the share price was 400. In the case of a normal firm, share price was 100. In the case of a normal firm, which is a declining firm, where R is less than KE, share price is much lesser. And if the retention ratio changed from 0.6 to 0.4, then it will be reverse. Why? Because for a growth firm, retention is supposed to be more, and it is more. That is why share price is more. But if the retention ratio is less, then it will be different. Then the value or the prices of the shares will be completely different. That is not asked in the question at all. But definitely, what can be concluded from this is when R is greater than K, the market value increases with the retention ratio. When R is less than K, market value stands to decrease with the retention ratio. When R is equal to K, market value is not affected by the dividend policy. More or less, the market value will be same. So that is the application of Gordon's model. Forget about all this. This is just extension of this. The question was asking for 3 different scenarios and share prices using the Gordon model. According to this data only, you have to calculate the questions, solve the questions and do the calculations. Final answer is that. Remaining things are just interpretation issues. Anyway, illustration 14. The following information is given in the case of Aditya Limited. EPS is 60 rupees, capitalization rate is 15%, return on investment is 25%, dividend payout ratio is 30%, and what is the price using Walters model, and what would be the optimum payout ratio as per the Gordon's model. See, both are asked here. So in this case, Gordon's model and Walters model both are asked. Fine, whatever it is, substitute in the formula and get the answer. So in case of Walters model, using this formula, you can find out the market price. All information is given. How much is D? Payout ratio is 30%. 30% of 60 rupees is naturally 18 rupees plus R by KE. R is how much? 0.25, 25% we can say. KE is 0.15 into E minus D, nothing but retention. E minus D, 60 minus 18. So that means 60 into 70% also you can take, which is nothing but 42. How much amount is retained per share? Divided by KE. KE is already known, 0.15. So just do the calculation and get the answer. 0.25 divided by 0.15 into 42 plus 18 divided by 0.15. 587 rupees. Approximately 587 or 586.67 is the price of the share according to the Walters model. According to the Walters model. And the second question says, what will be the optimum payout ratio according to Gordon's model? See, optimum payout ratio according to Walter or Gordon is same. That is not different. When the return on investment is 25%, whereas capitalization rate is only 15%, which is much higher than the capitalization rate, the optimum payout ratio is 0. Better not to distribute anything. Don't distribute anything. So optimum payout ratio is 0. And according to that, how much will be the price of the share if it is asked? That can be found out according to the Gordon's model. That is not asked, so not required. So only if what is optimum payout ratio is asked, it all depends upon R and KE. If R is greater than KE, optimum payout ratio is 0. If R is less than KE, optimum payout ratio is 100%. Straight away, entire amount shall be distributed as dividends. These are the various questions related to Walters model, Gordon's model, and Modigliani-Miller approach, and some of the other formulae also you have to remember. Again, as I said, some small bit if it comes, if you lose that 1 or 2 marks because of just negligence, that will be dangerous. So Graham and Dodd also, Linter's model also, formulae just you need to remember and apply. And after that, solve these questions which are given at the end of the chapter. Practical questions, practical problems are given. Mostly all of them are simply straight formulae type of questions. Data will be given, substitute, get the answer. Very useful for the examinations. Any of these questions can be given in the examination. So practice them very well. Very, very crucial to solve these questions. Those, if you have old study material who do not have these questions, my suggestion will be to download the material which is the latest one applicable for May 2021 examinations, and then solve those questions given in the end of the chapter. So that will conclude dividend policy and dividend decisions. We'll discuss another topic in the next session. Till then, take care. Bye bye. Thank you very much.